Hello, this is Steven Nojiri, and this is another Fukushima Ryu Ninjutsu video. This is an update video for May 2026. So, hello to all the viewers. I know that it's been a long time since I've put any content up on this channel. In other words, I've not posted a video in a couple of months, actually a few months. And as such, this video is an update video to try to bridge the gap from those last videos to the upcoming material. In this video, I'm going to discuss these following 7 points. There will be an update on the current projects. I'm going to talk about a Fukushima Ryu channel and group, an imperialist perspective, deeper efforts for the context of the material, individual techniques and teachings, critical response to poor scholarship or egotistical cash grabs, and 7, something about magic, this is going to be the bonus at the end. I'm going to update your knowledge on the Niso Daigo spell. So let's start by going through the current projects. So the first project is that 13 Generations of Nojiri. The research for this project is ongoing. I'm still hunting down any corroborating documents and basically any additional material that I can get to fill out the history and the narrative. Now, if you guys remember from the previous video, the 13 Generations of Nojiri is a family document. It won't be made public. It's a private document. However, a lot of material from that will feed into the other projects. So as I work on 13 Generations of Nojiri, the other projects will be fed information. The next project is the Choshu domain research. This is because Fukushima Ryu is actually a ninjutsu system of Choshu domain. Now I know that currently a lot of ninjutsu research scholars and historians say that Fukushima Ryu is Hiroshima domain, Fukushima, Masanori, etc., etc. But as in a previous video I've tried to explain to you guys, this is actually a giant misunderstanding. Fukushima Ryu is actually a Choshu domain ninjutsu. And extensive research is now underway and needed regarding Choshu domain's history in order to better understand the context of the world that the Fukushima Ryu ninjutsu system existed within. And then furthering that, feeding into that, is just Fukushima Ryu research in general. Continued efforts to locate any material that helps build on the existing and surviving knowledge of the system's history, culture, and techniques. This also means extensive research into Inko Ryu so as to be able to better understand the differences and the overlaps. As many of you are aware from videos that I've put out and from research that I've put out, Inko Ryu is another system from the Chugoku region, and a lot of researchers have misunderstood the relationship between Inko Ryu and Fukushima Ryu. They believe that Fukushima Ryu and Inko Ryu are the same system, but this is not true. This is not correct. Fukushima Ryu is a Choshu domain ninjutsu system. Inko Ryu is from Hiroshima, and it is a different system. It just builds off of Fukushima Ryu pieces. I will go into this more extensively in future videos and books that I release, but for now, understand that research of Inko Ryu is also part of research of Fukushima Ryu because of the overlaps and the differences. Finally, retranslating the actual scroll. Now I got to be very clear about this. Translating the actual scroll. Let me correct myself. Translation of the actual scroll. I want you guys to be very clear on this. The actual Fukushima Ryu Shiroma no Maki actually has never been translated. Yes, Sacred Conspiracy has a translation of the document, but in reality, the research has shown that document, the Fujita Seiko document, which is a transcription of the Tokyo National Museum document, the Tokyo National Museum one, as I have stated publicly, appears to be an Inko Ryu commentary, not actually a Fukushima Ryu document, but an Inko Ryu document. Meaning, and all the research that anybody has done, the ninjutsu historical researchers, they've all focused on that Tokyo Museum copy or the Fujita Seiko copy. What nobody has done yet is actually translate the actual Fukushima Ryu Shinobi no Maki. So that is what I'm working on now. And again, like I said, there will be a private version but there will be a public version. You guys will like the public version. The book that I'm working on is going to be extensive, and I think you'll enjoy it. So as I said, as you guys can already guess and understand, these projects overlap one another. So that as success is made within each project, the other projects benefit and grow as well. But a few extra points of clarification before we move on. I will continue with Tada, Genji, Jingunden, and Kusunoki research and presentations. So don't worry. I know, I obviously love all this Nojiri, Choshu, Fukushima stuff, but I know you guys also love the Tada, Genji, Jingunden, and Kusunoki stuff, which I love as well. So I will continue with Tada Genji. The channel is still Samurai Traditions of the Tada Genji. So Tada material, Jingunden material, Kusunoki material will continue, but it will slow down currently because I'm focusing extensively on the Nojiri Choshu Fukushima project. But as I said, I'll continue working on Jingunden, Tada, and Kusunoki, and there will be videos up. Like, for example, at the end of this video, you're going to get a Niso Daigo spell update, which is a Jingunden, Tada, Kusunoki thing. Alright. Now, in the previous slide, the one I just did, I just made mention about the Fukushima-ryu Shinobi no Maki technically has actually never been translated. Again, to reiterate, the document that everyone has been working on is the 1824 transcription of the 1797 Inko-ryu commentary. It's called the Fukushima-ryu document, but that document is actually an Inko-ryu commentary. It's not a Fukushima-ryu document, not really. And the actual Fukushima-ryu Shinobi no Maki that our Nojiri house possesses, in other words, the scroll from 1762 that we have is different from the book that the Tokyo National Museum has. The scroll that we possess from 1762 has additional material, and things are laid out differently. That understanding, that scroll, the way that scroll presents the Fukushima-ryu teachings, has not been released to the public yet. There is no translation. It is not available online. The list goes on, right? The Tokyo Museum book has been digitized and is available online. The 1762 scroll is privately held by my Nojiri family, and as such, that is going to be the document. That's the actual document that I'm working with. So I want the viewers to understand the key difference between the 1762 scroll versus the 1824 book. Moving on to the second topic, the Fukushima-ryu Ninjitsu channel and a group. So I've begun to work on another YouTube channel, which is going to focus entirely on Fukushima-ryu Ninjitsu. The plan would be to keep this channel for the Tada Genji, Jingunden, Kusunoki material and occasionally Fukushima-ryu material, but to shift most of the Fukushima-ryu material over to that Fukushima-ryu channel. Along with that, I'm considering forming a small group to study and work to preserve the traditions and teachings and the heritage that is present within and around Fukushima-ryu Ninjitsu. Now, to be clear, this group would be small and would exist solely to assist in the efforts to better understand the tradition, the history, and to preserve the culture, history, and teachings of the system and its context, aka Choshu domain history. So what I'm saying is, in order to understand Fukushima-ryu history and heritage and culture, you have to understand Choshu domain history, heritage, and culture as well. So this group would be not just the Fukushima-ryu Ninjitsu, but the context surrounding and containing Fukushima-ryu Ninjitsu. It is absolutely not a quote-unquote modern ninja school, and it absolutely is not some egotistical attempt for anyone involved to pretend that there's some sort of quote-unquote last true ninja or modern ninja or some other ridiculous claim. It's solely it's a cultural heritage project meant to safeguard the history, culture, teachings, and tradition for future generations. However, starting such a group does come with the risk of frauds, claiming association or membership, and then spreading bad and incorrect information to the world. So I might actually proceed with something more formal, like a foundation. So, for example, in the case to prevent this sort of issues, I may proceed forward with a something like a heritage foundation, an actual legal entity, and membership to that heritage foundation would be small and limited. This would help to prevent such those fraudulent claims and behaviors that would be the concern. But of course, with that, it would require much more formality and far more work. But it ultimately may be the correct way to proceed. So I will update in future videos about which of these directions we're going. Another important update is to make sure that the viewers understand the imperialist perspective and why I have it. So, most samurai researchers take a pro-shogun perspective. I do not. Think about this for a minute. Kusunoki-ryu is a pro-imperial system. Mononobe-ryu is a pro-imperial system. The Taira-Genji traditions are pro-imperial. Fukushima-ryu ninjutsu is a Choshu domain ninjutsu system, and Choshu domain is pro-imperial. In fact, Choshu domain is one of the main domains that defeated and toppled the shogun in the Boshin War. The Jingunden system literally means imperial army tradition, and it is absolutely a pro-imperial tradition. All of the systems that I work with are imperialist systems. The Nojiri family were imperialist. We fought against the Tokugawa during the Boshin War. We fought as imperialist to topple the shogun. So after all this time, it should be evident to the viewers that my stance and perspective is clearly an imperialist one and not a shogun perspective. In other words, pro-imperial, anti-Tokugawa. Now, of course, this means that I will continue to research and present material from a neutral perspective, or as neutral as I can. All research and material ultimately is tainted in some way by the researcher and the presenter, but I will endeavor to have a neutral perspective. But having said that, most scholars and researchers, especially in the West, have a pro-shogun perspective. But I don't have that. So unlike them, I do not mourn the passing of the samurai age. I fully am on board with the fact that Japan needed the shogunate to go away for the new age of Japan to begin. The shogunate was oppressive and was an obstacle to the growth and the success of the country. Many researchers who are pro-shogun, they mourn the passing of the shogunate, and they have a nostalgic pining away for the samurai days. And this actually directly impacts their work and the feeling of their work. So this is ultimately what I'm talking about. It's like the feeling or the perspective. So many people have this pining away for the samurai days, this, oh, if only the shogun had not been defeated in the Boshin War, etc., etc. I don't have that perspective. And because of that, you oftentimes people will say, I've heard people say, Nojiri's work feels different. Nojiri's research hits different. There's something different about Nojiri's work. And one of the things that's different is the fact that I don't have this, I have an imperialist perspective. I don't have a pro-shogun perspective. I love the samurai time period, but I fully embrace that it had to come to an end so that Japan could prosper and enter a new age. Thus, I am not pining away or grasping for something. My goal in my research, the feeling of my research, is to preserve the essence and spirit and bring it into the modern age. We preserve the history and the teachings and the culture, but we're not trying to grasp for something in the past. We're not trying to pine away for something in the past. We are preserving this culture, this heritage, and bringing it into the modern age. There's an embracing the fact that the times changed. And that's one reason that my work feels different from other researchers. So this has some definitive impacts on the work too. So for example, I am not afraid for my research and work to go up in through to the Meiji period. Many of the pro-shogunate researchers, they always like to stop and cut off their research in the early 1800s. They try to pretend that the 1800s just don't count. You get a lot, if you just see, a lot of researchers just don't go into the 1800s. they act as if the 1800s isn't valid samurai history. It just, the 1800s don't count. And it's because they're pro-shogunate perspective. They pine away for the days of the samurai. They pine away for the shogunate. And because of that, they avoid the 1800s. And this is simply an absurd stance. The 1800s are 100% part of samurai history. In fact, some of the most profound and deepest events manifest in the 1800s. The 1800s are, in many ways, the final flowering of the samurai. We see the climax of the culture in full bloom. So many things that start in the 1400s and slowly evolve and change, slowly blossom through the 1600s and 1700s, and reach their final crescendo in the 1800s. Meaning that the 1800s is the where we see the final form or the final evolution of so many samurai ideologies, samurai teachings, etc., 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 etc. So being pro-imperial and not pro-shogun, I am not afraid to dive into the 1800s. For me, the ending of the shogunate isn't a tragedy. It's the perfect, beautiful ending to the Age of the Samurai. Look at your screen in red. Don't think of the Meiji Restoration as like the samurai were forced to disappear. Don't look at it that way. That's a shogun perspective. The imperial perspective is far more beautiful and far more creative and has so much more life to it, so much more potential to it. And that is that the restoration is samurai deliberately putting an end to their time period so that the country of Japan could survive. The next point is just a brief discussion on deeper efforts. So I plan to continue to dive deeply into the material and work that I undertake. This means long research times and complex ideas when it becomes presented to you. I promise you the complexity is crucial, and the context of each piece is crucial. I do not believe that you are made better if I give you watered down, oversimplified factoids. Factoids without the proper context is just me trying to sell you something. I'm trying to actually teach you something. My goal is for you to actually learn this material and be able to do something, bring this material into some kind of greater context. And in order for that to happen, you have to have more than just a simple presentation. You need to understand the context or the complexity of these topics. I would argue that the entire topic of samurai is so misunderstood and is such an abused topic because so many people do not respect the complexity nor the context of the topic. There's so many lies and falsehoods and just flat out poor, bad misunderstandings exist because people take the easy way out and they just want to present simple factoids or just cool parts without the proper understanding of the full picture. I'm just not made from that kind of parts, right? I just cannot give you piss poor factoids just for the sake. I'm not made from that kind of parts. So I will continue to do complex work and deep efforts will be made to comprehend the context. And then when I present it to you, it will be complex and it will be within context. That is just how I do things. And I will continue to do things that way. I will also continue the next point, individual techniques and teachings. Yes, that will continue. I will continue to present individual teachings and individual techniques, such as that climbing video that I put out a few months back, when we talk about the Genji ink stick and the tying off of the stick and the tying of swords and using swords and spears and sticks to climb, etc., etc. I'll continue to put those kind of videos out as well. But of course, in keeping with this entire deeper context and understanding, I'll work to present you a more complete look at the tradition. I'm not just going to give you like a 2-minute video on some of the basic factoids of something. I don't believe in that approach. I will not be doing that approach. So as such, I will put out these individual teachings and techniques, but they will be complex and they will have lots of background information. So at the end of this video, for example, so let's move on. So as an example, the next point is that that magic update, and I'm going to. So if you have the book, the Tata Genji, if you have the Samurai Traditions of the Tata Genji book, go ahead and get it out. If you've been following my videos on the book, you will probably find this next bit very satisfying. But well, before we go on, you have your book. If you have the book out, leave it out. But before we go on, let me hit this point first before we do the magic and end. I'm critical of ego and critical of poor research. Now, I wasn't originally going to include this in the video, but I decided to because I'm seeing some trends picking up. So I have to be clear about this. I remain critical of egotistical ninja authorities, and I put that in quotes sarcastically. Egotistical ninja authorities and poor researchers. I remain critical. Egotism and poor research puts the shinobi heritage in danger. Those who wish to sacrifice the history and cultural heritage of actual shinobi and their descendants simply to pretend that they are a modern day ninja for money or for ego, I hold them in contempt. They put the traditions at risk for their own selfish delusions. Now again, on a personal level, they might be good people, and I wish them happiness and liberation. But on a societal and a professional level, I denounce them and their efforts. And I usually try to keep this aspect out of public view, but in this last year, I have begun to notice a very sharp rise in alleged ninja experts and alleged last modern day ninjas. And I think that I'm going to have to be more vocal and critical within the public's view. And honestly, the same goes for poor research. Poor research also hurts the preservation of authentic heritage and history. Anyone who decides that they're going to enter the arena or step up and work with the preservation of samurai history needs to understand that they are not playing with fiction. It is becoming disturbing, the amount of people that can't seem to understand that samurai history is the history of real human beings. It's not lore from some intellectual property. It is not Star Wars. It's not Lord of the Rings. It's not some anime lore. It's not Elden Ring lore. It's not lore from any kind of fiction. This is the real history and heritage of real human beings. These families still exist. There are many people alive today who were actually raised by people who had been samurai. Let me give you an example of this. Samurais born in 1850. They fight at 18 in the war at 1868. So they're 18 in 1868 and they fight in the war. They have their first kid in 1885, around 35 years old. Their first grandkid is born in, say, 1931. So they're 81, their kid is in their 40s, their kid has a grandkid. So now this person who was born and reached adulthood as a samurai and fought in the Meiji Restoration, fought in the Boshin War, is alive in 1931 at 81 years old. And they're raising their grandkid. That grandkid, who was born in 1931, would be in 2026 95 years old. So you could have a 95-year-old old man. So for example, you got a 95-year-old man who was raised by his grandparents, but his grandparents were born before the Restoration and they reached adulthood and participated in the Boshin War. That is reality. There are people that are in their 90s that were raised by their grandparents who were samurai during the Boshin War. So this is not something from ancient times. There are people alive today who as kids were raised by their grandparents who had been samurai. It's not ancient history. So samurai historians and samurai researchers must be responsible. Samurai research must be responsible research. All right, and so now with your book out, if you have the Tata Genji book out, you can open to page 177 and 178. This is your update for the Niso Daigo spell. So, first thing, I want you to notice that the Niso Daigo spell comes right after the 10 treasures section. This was on purpose. This isn't just random. This is on purpose. And this is because this spell is actually connected not only to Niso Daigo, but to the 10 treasures. Look on page 178. Do you see the 10 dots on the spell? Those 10 dots are the 10 treasures. That's your next lesson for this spell. The 10 dots are the 10 treasures. And also I will give the proof of this in the updated Fukushimaru text. This isn't just an idea I have. I know this for a fact, and I also have documented proof for it. If you want that as well, it will be in the Fukushimaru, the updated text. The Niso Daigo spell is both Niso Daigo and 10 treasures tradition. Now, how was the Niso Daigo tradition and the 10 treasures tradition connected? Well, for that, you will need to stay in tune for the next lesson, for a future update.